The year was 2478. Earth was not the same as it had been centuries ago. Wars, hunger, and greed were things of the past. Now, humanity lived in peace. Technology had grown, but so had art, laughter, and kindness. It was called the Second Renaissance, a time when creativity and joy mattered as much as machines. Among the many dreams born in this new world was the dream of exploring the stars. And so, the Hope Runner was built. The Hope Runner was a giant ship, bright silver like a blade cutting through the blackness of space. It carried a crew of 200 men and women, each the best in their fields. Scientists, engineers, doctors, diplomats, and one cultural anthropologist named William Carter. William Carter stood by the ship's long curved window, watching stars streak past. He was 29 years old, with messy brown hair and sharp green eyes. His face often wore a small smile, as if he was always thinking of a secret joke. He wore a plain blue jumpsuit, like the rest of the crew, but his badge was different. It said, William Carter, Cultural Exchange Officer. William's job was not to fight or fix machines. His mission was to understand, to find common ground with alien civilizations, to build friendships, and he believed the best way to connect was simple: laughter. He flipped open his small leather notebook, filled with jokes, riddles, and funny stories from Earth's many cultures. Maybe one day, he thought, I'll tell the first joke in another galaxy. Behind him, the doors of the observation deck slid open with a soft hiss. Captain Elena Mendez, a strong woman with silver hair tied back neatly, stepped inside. "You ready, Carter?" she asked, her voice warm but firm. William turned and grinned. "Born ready, Captain." Mendez chuckled. "Good. Command just picked up something interesting. A signal. Not natural. Definitely made by someone or something." William's heart skipped a beat. "First contact. Maybe," Mendez said. "Get your gear. Briefing in 10 minutes." She left as quickly as she came, her boots tapping lightly on the metal floor. William stared back out at the stars, feeling a thrill he could barely contain. All his life he had studied ancient cultures, old languages, lost jokes. Now he might be the first human to meet a new civilization, maybe even share a laugh with them. The ship's speakers chimed across the halls. "All crew to briefing rooms. Unknown signal detected. Prepare for first contact protocol." The crew moved quickly but calmly. Scientists gathered their scanners. Engineers checked the ship's shields. Medical teams prepared for emergencies. William tucked his notebook into his bag and jogged toward the main briefing room. The hallways of the Hope Runner were wide and clean, lined with soft blue lights. Small helper drones buzzed past, carrying equipment. Screens on the walls showed maps of the nearby stars, each blinking with possibilities. As he walked, William thought about what this moment meant, not just for him, but for all of Earth. A meeting between two worlds. A handshake or a misunderstanding. He knew that words could fail where laughter might succeed. In the briefing room, Captain Mendez stood by the large central table. A hologram floated above it, showing the signal source, a vast structure spinning slowly in deep space. It was far bigger than anything built on Earth. "We're going in," the captain said. "Stay sharp, stay respectful, and stay human." William nodded to himself. Respect, curiosity, laughter. That would be his guide. The engines of the Hope Runner roared softly as the ship turned toward the unknown. Ahead of them waited mystery, danger, and perhaps a new friend. William grinned and thought, let's hope they have a sense of humor. The Hope Runner moved through the darkness of space like a silent arrow. Everyone on board was alert. The strange signal they had picked up was getting stronger. It pulsed like a slow heartbeat, steady and unnatural. No one had ever seen anything like it. William Carter sat strapped into his seat in the command deck. His notebook was tucked safely into his bag. He stared at the large main screen that filled the front wall. Out there somewhere was the source of the signal. Out there something or someone was waiting. Signal locked, said Lieutenant Rado, the ship's communications officer. His fingers danced over the controls. We are less than 1,000 kilometers from the source. Captain Mendez stood tall at the center of the deck. Visuals up, she ordered. The screen flickered, and then it appeared. A massive structure floated ahead. It was unlike anything they had imagined. It was round like a giant wheel, with long arms reaching out into space. Lights blinked along its surface. Towers and spires rose from its center, sharp and cold. The crew stared in silence. "It's a city," whispered someone. "A space station," corrected another. William leaned forward, his heart pounding. This wasn't just a ship. It was a fortress, maybe even a capital, a symbol of great power. The screen zoomed in. Strange symbols lined the station's walls. They were sharp and perfect, almost like a machine had drawn them. There were no bright colors. Everything was gray, silver or black. "Receiving transmission," said Rado. "It's an invitation." Captain Mendez frowned. "An invitation?" "Yes, Captain. They know we are here. They are requesting a formal meeting." The crew exchanged nervous glances. William smiled slightly. "At least they want to talk," he said. The captain nodded. "Prepare the diplomatic team. Full protocol. Formal uniforms." William quickly pulled out his sleek formal jacket from his locker. It was simple, dark blue with a silver earth patch on the shoulder. He checked his notebook once more. He wouldn't bring weapons. He would bring ideas, stories, and jokes, tools of peace. 30 minutes later, a small shuttle launched from the Hope Runner and headed toward the station. Inside the shuttle, the diplomatic team sat quietly. William, Captain Mendez, and 3 other officers were among them. They wore serious faces, but William could see the fear in their eyes. "First impressions matter," Captain Mendez said calmly. "No sudden movements. Speak only when spoken to. Show respect." The shuttle docked with a soft hiss against the giant station. The doors opened. Waiting for them were figures in long dark robes. Their faces were pale, their eyes cold. They moved with stiff, perfect precision, as if they had practiced every step 1,000 times. A tall figure stepped forward. His robe was heavier, decorated with silver lines. His voice was deep and flat, as he spoke through a small translator device on his collar. "Welcome, travelers. You are guests of the Galactic Empire. Follow us." The words were polite, but there was no warmth in them. The humans followed the silent procession down endless halls made of dark metal. The air was thin and smelled faintly of something sharp like cold steel. No paintings on the walls. No music, no laughter. Only silence and order. William's stomach twisted. He had studied many civilizations, but never one so lifeless. Finally, they reached a grand chamber. It was vast, with a high ceiling supported by black pillars. At the far end, a throne stood on a raised platform. Sitting there was a man, or something like a man. His face was strong but without emotion. His eyes were as hard as stone. Grand Marshal Zorak. Captain Mendez and her team bowed slightly, as Earth's protocol demanded. The Grand Marshal stood slowly. His voice echoed in the hall. "You come from a distant world. You seek contact. We will listen." William saw it clearly now. This was a civilization built on control, on silence, on seriousness. He wondered, how would they react to the simple human joy of laughter? He would soon find out. The grand chamber was so quiet that William could hear his own breathing. The humans stood in a line, facing Grand Marshal Zorak and a group of high-ranking Empire officials. All of them wore dark robes. Their faces were blank, their eyes sharp. The walls were covered with large banners, showing the Empire's symbol, a silver circle crossed by 2 straight lines. No color, no decoration, just cold perfection. Captain Mendez stepped forward and bowed again. "We come in peace," she said clearly. "We bring greetings from Earth, a planet that values respect, understanding, and friendship." Zorak did not smile. He gave a small, stiff nod. "Words are acknowledged," State your purpose. William shifted slightly, feeling the tension in the room like a heavy weight. He clutched his notebook inside his bag, but stayed silent for now. Captain Mendez continued, "We hope to exchange knowledge and culture, and learn from each other." Zorik raised his hand. A group of officials brought out a large silver box and placed it on a table between them. Slowly, they opened it. Inside were documents, strange mechanical devices, and a black cube that hummed with energy. "This is a gift from the Galactic Empire," Zorik announced, "a symbol of our strength and our order." The human team politely examined the gift. It was impressive, but cold, powerful, but without any feeling. Then it was Earth's turn. Captain Mendez nodded at William. William stepped forward and pulled out a small device from his bag. It was a simple hollow projector. He placed it on the floor and pressed a button. Instantly, colorful images floated in the air, laughing children, smiling faces, music, dancing. Scenes from Earth's festivals, parades, and celebrations filled the space. It was beautiful. It was joyful. William smiled warmly and said, "This is what we value: life, creativity, and happiness." For a moment nothing happened. The Empire officials stared at the images without emotion. Their faces did not change. Their bodies stayed stiff. Then, the unexpected happened. One of the human officers, Lieutenant Parker, let out a small giggle. He was trying to hold it back, but the complete seriousness of the Empire officials, their cold reactions to Earth's brightest moments, it was too much. The giggle turned into a snort. Then William, trying to cover his smile, accidentally let out a soft chuckle. And like a spark in dry grass, laughter spread through the human team. It wasn't loud. It wasn't rude. It was natural, harmless, full of nervousness and amazement at the strange situation. But to the Galactic Empire, it was an act of war. Grand Marshal Zorik's eyes narrowed. The officials around him stiffened even more. Some even looked shocked, as if someone had shouted an insult. "You mock us," Zorik said slowly, his voice deep and cold. "You bring chaos and disrespect into the Hall of Order." Captain Mendez quickly stepped forward, raising her hands in peace. "No, this was not mocking. It was a mistake. Humans sometimes laugh when we are nervous or overwhelmed." But Zorik did not listen. To him, laughter was a loss of control, a weakness that could not be tolerated. "You have broken the code of discipline," he said. "You must be judged." Two guards in black armor stepped forward, weapons at their sides. William's smile faded. He realized now just how big the gap was between Earth and this empire. They didn't just misunderstand laughter, they feared it. Captain Mendez spoke firmly. "We request a chance to explain ourselves properly." Zorik stared at them for a long moment. Finally, he said, "You will be given one chance." One. The guards lowered their weapons, but they did not leave. The meeting ended in cold silence. The human team was escorted to a waiting room with heavy doors and no windows. It felt like a prison cell, even though no one said it. Inside, William sat down heavily on a bench. He opened his notebook and scribbled a few words. "They fear laughter. They think joy is chaos. We must find a way to show them it's not." He looked up at his team. They were shaken, but determined. "We're not done yet," William said quietly. "We just need to find the right way." Captain Mendez nodded. "One chance," she reminded them. "We better make it count." Outside, beyond the thick walls, the heart of the Galactic Empire beat on, cold, silent, and unyielding. The room was cold and silent. William Carter sat on the edge of the bench, thinking hard. The human team had been locked inside this holding room for nearly an hour. Heavy steel walls surrounded them. A small speaker on the ceiling crackled from time to time, reminding them that they were being watched. Captain Mendez paced back and forth. "They're deciding if we're worth talking to," she said quietly. "Or if they should just remove us." Lieutenant Parker sat with his head in his hands. "All because we laughed." William closed his notebook and stood up. "We can still fix this," he said. "But we have to speak their language." Captain Mendez raised an eyebrow. "And what language is that?" "Order," William replied. "They value control. To them, laughter looks like chaos. If we show them that humor has structure, meaning, even discipline, they might listen." The captain nodded slowly. All right, what's your plan? Before William could answer, the door slid open with a loud hiss. 2 guards stepped inside. You will come, one of them said. Grand Marshal Zorak demands your defense. The humans straightened their jackets and followed the guards through the empty halls. Their footsteps echoed loudly. Every corner they turned looked the same. Dark metal, sharp lines, no decoration. At last, they entered a smaller chamber. Zorak sat at the end of a long black table. His face was like stone. You have disrespected the code of order, Zorak said without emotion. Explain yourselves. Captain Mendez gave William a slight nod. It was up to him now. William stepped forward. Grand Marshal Zorak, he said respectfully. On Earth, laughter is not chaos. It is not disrespect. It is a form of communication. It is a way to deal with fear, confusion, and even admiration. Zorak watched him without blinking. William continued, choosing each word carefully. In our world, laughter follows rules. It often has timing, meaning, and balance. It is not wild noise. It is a signal that we are open, that we are not threats. He paused and saw that the Empire officials were listening, not smiling, but listening. William took out a small device from his bag. It was a hollow projector, but this time he did not show colorful festivals. Instead, he played a short video. A human child slipping on a banana peel, standing up and laughing at himself. The video was simple. The child fell but was not hurt. He laughed because it was surprising, because it was harmless. William pointed to the screen. Laughter helps us face the unexpected without fear. It teaches us flexibility. It does not weaken us. It strengthens us. The room stayed silent. William's heart thudded in his chest. He knew it wasn't enough yet. He took a deep breath and added, if laughter truly brought chaos, our world would have collapsed long ago. Instead, it helped us survive and thrive. It helped us unite. He finished and stepped back. Zorak leaned back in his chair. His face remained blank, but his fingers tapped slowly on the table. Once, twice. You claim laughter brings strength, Zorak said. Prove it. William's mind raced. How could he prove something so deeply human? Suddenly, he had an idea. A crazy one, but maybe the only one. I request a demonstration, William said. A trial by laughter. Zorak's eyes narrowed slightly. Explain. You will pick one of your officials. William said calmly. I will tell them a joke. If they laugh, you will see that humor is powerful, not chaotic. Zorak considered this for a long moment. You risk much, he said. If you fail, negotiations end. There will be consequences. I accept, William said without hesitation. Captain Mendez shifted uneasily, but said nothing. The crew trusted William now. He was their best hope. Zorak raised a hand. A young official stepped forward. His face was thin, his expression stiff. He looked nervous but hid it behind a blank stare. William took a slow breath. He needed a joke simple enough to cross cultures. Something about order and surprise. He began. Why did the robot go on vacation? The official blinked. William smiled gently and finished. Because it needed to recharge its batteries. There was silence. Then a small twitch at the corner of the young official's mouth. A tiny, almost invisible smile. Zorak's eyes narrowed even more. The young official fought hard, but finally let out a short, sharp laugh. A real one. The sound echoed in the cold chamber. Everyone froze. William lowered his head slightly in respect. You see, Grand Marshal, he said. Even machines need rest. Even order needs moments of joy. Zorak did not smile, but he stood slowly. You have demonstrated a point, he said carefully. There may yet be worth in your chaos. Captain Mendez nodded, her face calm. William felt a deep relief inside him. The first crack in the Empire's walls had appeared, but he knew the real test was yet to come. The atmosphere inside the Galactic Empire station had changed. It was not a big change, only a crack in the ice, but it was there. After the young official's small laugh, the Empire's leaders allowed the humans to stay longer. They would be given a second meeting, a cultural exchange session, as William called it. It was their only chance to build trust. Inside a large meeting hall, preparations were made. Long black tables were set up. Sharp white lights glowed from above. Everything still looked cold and strict, but now there was a small air of curiosity among the Empire officials. William and Captain Mendez stood at the front of the room. "All right," Captain Mendez said softly. "This is it. No mistakes." William smiled and nodded. He had carefully prepared what he would share: simple games, riddles, and harmless jokes, things that showed structure, not chaos. Soon, dozens of Empire officials entered the room. They sat stiffly at the tables, their hands resting perfectly in their laps, their faces unreadable. William stepped forward, holding a small cube. It projected images into the air. "This," he said, "is a puzzle from Earth. It teaches logic and teamwork." The first exercise was a simple game, matching colored shapes to form a picture. William demonstrated it carefully, showing the steps in order. At first, the Empire officials watched in silence, but after a few moments, a few began to move. They picked up the shapes and tried to complete the puzzle. One finished his puzzle in record time. Another finished and, very quietly, nodded with satisfaction. William smiled. They were not laughing yet, but they were participating. It was a beginning. Next, William introduced a riddle. "I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with the wind. What am I?" The officials stared at him, thinking. One finally said, "An echo." William clapped his hands once gently. "Correct." A faint flicker, almost like pride, passed across the official's face. Little by little, the stiff atmosphere loosened. Finally, William decided it was time for something bolder. He told a simple classic joke. "Why don't skeletons fight each other? Because they don't have the guts." Silence, then a soft sound. A small, short laugh from one of the younger officials. The sound echoed in the quiet hall. Heads turned sharply toward the source of the laugh. The young official immediately straightened in his seat, his face turning pale. He looked terrified. But Grand Marshal Zorak, sitting at the back of the room, did not speak. He simply watched. William quickly said, "Laughter is not disrespect. It shows understanding. It shows learning." The other humans joined in, smiling warmly but respectfully. William led them into another exercise. This time, a team challenge where the officials had to build a simple structure using strange objects like soft sticks and rings. At first, the officials hesitated. But when one team's tower collapsed with a soft thump, another small ripple of laughter broke out. Low, short, and quickly hidden. But it was there. Each laugh, each small smile, was a victory. Captain Mendez leaned over to William and whispered, "You're doing it." William nodded but stayed focused. He knew this was delicate work. Too much laughter too soon might scare them. Too little, and nothing would change. By the end of the session, a few officials were exchanging glances, not cold, but curious. Some even whispered quietly among themselves. Grand Marshal Zorak stood up at last. "You have shown unexpected skill," he said slowly. "You have taught order through unusual methods." William bowed his head respectfully. "It is through laughter and challenge," he said, "that we grow stronger." Zorak said nothing for a moment. Then he gave a single sharp nod. "You will meet with me personally," he said. "Tomorrow." The room emptied out quietly, but William could feel it. The heavy ice of fear was beginning to melt. Not much, not fully, but enough. As they walked back to their quarters, Captain Mendez clapped William gently on the shoulder. "Good work, Carter," she said. "Tomorrow is the real battle." William smiled, but felt the weight of what was coming. Tomorrow, he would face Grand Marshal Zorak directly, and he would have to make him laugh. The next morning felt heavier than any day before. William Carter woke early. He barely touched his breakfast. His mind was racing. Today he had to face Grand Marshal Zorik alone. Today he had to do something no human had ever done: make the leader of the Galactic Empire laugh. He reviewed his notes again and again. He chose his words carefully. There would be no second chance. Captain Mendez met him outside his quarters. "You ready?" she asked. William gave a small, tight smile. "As ready as I'll ever be." 2 silent guards arrived to escort him. They wore black armor and marched with perfect precision. Without a word they led William through endless gray corridors, past blank walls and sealed doors. Finally they stopped before a tall, heavy door. One guard pressed a button. The door slid open with a slow hiss. William stepped inside. The room was large and empty except for a single dark throne at the far end. Grand Marshal Zorik sat there, dressed in a heavier robe with silver chains crossing his chest. He looked even more powerful up close. His face was hard and cold, like a carved statue. William approached and bowed low, showing respect. Zorik spoke first. "You have one attempt," he said. His voice was flat and deep. "One attempt to show that laughter is not weakness." William nodded once. He stood straight, took a slow breath, and began. He didn't start with a joke. He started with a simple truth. "Grand Marshal," he said, "I understand your world is built on order, strength, control. These are great achievements. We admire them." Zorik's face stayed still, but William continued. "True strength is not just standing tall when everything is calm. True strength is standing tall when the unexpected happens." He paused to let the words sink in. "On Earth, laughter helps us survive the unexpected. It makes us flexible, not weak." Zorik said nothing. The silence was thick. William took another breath. It was time. He told a story, simple, short, and sharp. Once there was a great general. He was proud, fierce, and unbeatable. One day, after winning a long battle, he stood before his army to give a speech. But as he stepped up to the podium, he slipped on a banana peel. William mimed the slip with a small, careful movement. Not silly, but honest. He continued. The army gasped. They expected anger. They expected fear. But the general stood up, brushed himself off, and laughed. A deep, strong laugh. His army laughed with him. And because of that, they loved him even more. William stepped back, finishing the story. For a long moment, Zorik simply stared at him. The silence dragged on. William felt the cold sweat on his back. Had he failed? Then something incredible happened. At the corners of Zorik's mouth, there was the tiniest twitch. His lips pressed together hard, but his shoulders moved, just a little. A low, strange sound escaped his throat. It wasn't loud, it wasn't strong, but it was a laugh. A short, rough, unwilling laugh, but a real one. The 2 guards at the door stiffened, shocked. The whole room seemed to pause. William bowed his head again, hiding his wide smile. Zorik leaned forward slightly, studying William with new eyes. "You are dangerous," Zorik said, but his voice was not angry. It was thoughtful. "You bring ideas that change things. I bring understanding," William said softly. "Not chaos." Zorik stood. "Perhaps there is strength in facing the unexpected. Perhaps there is order in choosing when to bend." He stepped down from the throne. "You will bring your people's knowledge to the Empire," he commanded, under supervision. William nodded. It was not full acceptance, but it was a door opening. Behind Zorik, the guards relaxed slightly. One even looked curious. William knew the battle was not fully won, but the first wall had fallen. As he followed Zorik out of the room, he thought to himself, "A laugh can be small, but it can echo forever." The change came slowly, but it came. Over the next few days, the atmosphere inside the Galactic Empire station softened. The humans were no longer treated like dangerous outsiders. Now they were seen as strange but valuable guests. Grand Marshal Zorik kept his public face serious, but the rules around the humans relaxed. They were allowed to teach small classes to young Empire officers, lessons about Earth, about creativity, about how laughter did not mean disrespect. William Carter led many of these sessions. He taught them simple Earth games, puzzles, and jokes that showed cleverness and order. The young officers were cautious at first. They looked over their shoulders before smiling. But smiles grew, and soon, even quiet laughter filled the halls. William watched it all with quiet pride. He knew it would take generations for the Empire to truly change, but the first seeds had been planted. 1 week later, a grand ceremony was held. Inside the great hall where their first tense meeting had taken place, humans and Empire officials now gathered together. Grand Marshal Zorek stood at the center, his black robes sharp against the silver walls. He spoke in a calm, heavy voice. The Galactic Empire recognizes the value of cultural exchange with the people of Earth. We open the path to learning, to controlled flexibility, to strength through understanding. It was the Empire's way of saying, welcome. In their own words, their own style. Captain Mendez signed the new treaty on behalf of Earth. William signed as well, his hand steady. The humans had done it. They had crossed a gap not with weapons but with ideas, and with a little laughter. Later, back aboard the Hope Runner, William sat by the wide observation window. Stars stretched across the black sky like tiny candles. Captain Mendez joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You pulled it off, Carter," she said, handing him a cup. "You changed an empire." William smiled as he sipped the hot drink. "Not changed," he said quietly. "Just opened a little door." They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars drift by. The ship's engines hummed softly. The crew moved through the halls, packing up. Soon they would leave the Empire's space and head for new territories. New worlds. New meetings. New challenges. William opened his old worn notebook and scribbled a final line. "Laughter is not the end of order. It is the beginning of understanding." He closed the notebook and smiled. As he looked out into the endless galaxy, he thought, if they thought laughter was dangerous, wait until they hear about karaoke. He laughed softly to himself. The universe was big. The journey was just beginning.